What major improvement did 70% of men get from using a pump? You are going to find out all about that and more in this video. We're going to unpack whether using a penis pump actually works for men who have erectile dysfunction. We're going to look at three main reasons that men with ED purchase a pump. Firstly, create an erection. Secondly, to help with intercourse. And the third reason is to increase penile size. We have got a very unique way of looking at this in this video. We are going to be analysing the data from a survey I sent out via my newsletter, which is something you can join if you haven't already. I send out practical sexual recovery tips every fortnight. There's a link in the description box below for you to do so. And I also sent it out to you guys on YouTube. Now, 865 men who filled out that survey reported having partial or full erectile dysfunction. So that's the data we're going to focus on today. We're going to focus on whether pumps for men who currently have erectile dysfunction are working. Also, from those men who filled out the survey, most of them had undergone some form of prostate cancer treatment, which makes sense because my whole website started because I was working with men who had prostate cancer, helping them get their sex life back. So while that's the cross-section of men we'll be looking at, this video will be relevant for anybody who has erectile dysfunction and is wondering, will a penis pump work? One question I asked during the survey to get a rough idea on this was how satisfied men were with the current pump they were using. So you can see from this graph here, they were asked to rate either 0, totally unsatisfied, or 10 out of 10, completely satisfied. And most men rated their pump an 8 out of 10. So that's pretty encouraging when it comes to asking the question, well, do pumps work? Probably yes. At the same time, as you can see here, we have 134 men in the survey who rated their pump as just 5 out of 10, so just a bit average. So this to me started to suggest that there were some improvements that could possibly be made with pumps. Then it got me thinking maybe it's the type of pump they're using. So then if we analyze the satisfaction ratings from the perspective of the type of pump men are using, you can see from this graph here that there are some pumps that are performing a lot better than others. The three best in show we have here are the Vacurect, the erectile, and the Soma Erect. Now all three of these pumps are FDA approved. They're medical grade penis pumps that have been designed specifically for erectile dysfunction. So in a way, it sort of makes sense that these will be the top performing pumps for men who have ED, but it's really useful to see at the same time from men who are actually using them, especially because if we now look at the cost differences between pumps, it makes sense that a lot of men will want to start out with maybe a sex shop pump on the cheaper side, but ultimately what we're seeing here from the data is that going for a medical grade pump, if you can afford to do so, leads to a better experience. So what we can do now is dig a little bit deeper into each type of pump using qualitative data. These are written responses that I asked men after they had given their satisfaction rating to justify their rating. What I noticed from the written responses was that a lot of the issues tended to be something to do technically with how the equipment was designed. So for example, one man wrote that he needed a way to hold the erection longer, another said he needed better rings to maintain the erection, somebody mentioned better able to seal the pump properly against the body, somebody else wrote to increase the vacuum available, have a smaller opening, somebody said that they wanted to change the pump bowl, it was too hard and difficult to use when they had lubricant on their hands. So that suggests that possibly it is to do with getting the right kind of equipment to start with when you are dealing with erectile dysfunction. By the way, if you're using one of the pumps that's been mentioned in this survey, I'd love to hear from you in the comments section below. Write which pump it is that you use and give it a score out of 10. So if we now turn our attention to the medical grade pumps, something I noticed across all three of them, but especially with the Vacurect, a really clear theme emerged as I was just reading down all of the comments of why people voted it so highly. It included ease of use, the integrated ring and pump mechanism got mentioned a lot. Somebody mentioned it's simple, compact, no hoses, and somebody else was saying the number of rings, so I can use tighter one for intercourse and a looser one for rehabilitation. So again, this suggests getting that right kind of equipment that has the right technical parts for what you're wanting to use it for is important. And when you're using these pumps every day, which a lot of men who are looking for a pump for ED will be doing, something that has ease of use can make a huge difference over time. Something else I noticed though while I was looking at the written responses, and this is actually across all different pump types, men who were voting less than 7 out of 10 often were actually talking about the quality of the erection they got from using a pump. So even when the pump worked in terms of bringing blood into the penis, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the same kind of erection that they were used to before they had erectile dysfunction. For example, somebody said that in order for them to rate the pump higher, they would need a stiffer erection. Somebody else mentioned they need a way of having the rings to be supportive at the base to enable vaginal penetration hands-free, as in to address the hinged erection effect. So the hinged effect is when the erection hangs down from the body because there is not enough stiffness or hardness in the base of the body. An interesting side note though, there were men who actually written that what they loved was that they had their erection back. They had the erection that they knew and loved back just from using a pump. So it's an interesting one. I think this is an area that does need a lot more research on why it is that some men use a pump but then have a different kind of erection. Others are using a pump but they still get a really good erection, exactly the same as their natural one. Something to keep in mind as well is that the flavor of erection that you get might not matter if you're only using this for penile rehabilitation, so to bring blood flow into the penis and out again regularly, essentially as a form of exercise for your penile tissue, your sit-ups, as we could say, your stand-ups in fact. However, if you wanted to bring it into the bedroom to have a more partnered style of workout, you are going to be quite interested in whether the erection that you create from using a pump and a ring system will be sufficient for something like intercourse. When we just look at men who reported they wanted to use a pump for intercourse, most men have found that the pump has helped. They have said that it has improved their sex life, which to me suggests that it has made it possible for them to have penetrative sex. Something I need to call myself out on here is I didn't make it clear whether this was intercourse vaginally or anally. And I do apologize for that. Everybody has a different sexual practice, and I should have made that a lot clearer in this survey. When I do future surveys, I am definitely going to keep this in mind to make my language a lot more precise during the survey. So then I went through those written responses to see if anybody had mentioned how the pump had affected their sex life. The men who had rated the pump highly and also said that they were using it for intercourse said comments like, "It's made sex possible again. It's given my wife and I chance of intimacy 2 years post-operation." And somebody said, "With daily use over the last year, my erections are staying hard enough for extended intercourse." So that's great to also see that it sounds like practice makes progress also with using the pump. But not everybody was satisfied with the pump when it came to their sex life. So for men who said they wanted to use the pump for intercourse, but they weren't having a satisfactory time with their pump, the written comments said that it was due to the loss of spontaneity. And somebody even said the loss of spontaneity which the pump cannot fix. Because of course you have to be intentional about using a pump. It is quite difficult to weave that very seamlessly into your sexual activity. There are ways, of course, of enjoying a more intentional, less spontaneous sex life. In fact, there is an article that you can read all about that on my website, and I'll pop that in the description box below. Let's move on to our third reason that men might be using a penis pump, and that is to increase penile size. Now, it's very contentious from a physiological perspective on whether using a penis pump over time can in fact increase penile size. It would take a whole other video to talk through all the different opinions out there. Instead, what we can do here is just focus in on the data at hand. So most men who did the survey have had prostate cancer treatment. In particular, many of them had had prostate surgery. Now, what we do know from the clinical literature for men post-prostate surgery is that a percentage of them may experience some decrease in penile size. So it tends to be roughly about 1 centimeter. And the daily use of a pump, usually for a minimum of 4 weeks, is what the literature tests, can bring back some size. So it was rather fun analysing this data and looking at different data sets in order to see if a change of size had occurred. So our first data set here was everyone who reported a degree of erectile dysfunction. We can see different time frames to show that change in size depending on how long they'd used a pump for. So many reported using a pump for less than a month weren't seeing a great increase in size. You can see the longer time frames. We are noticing that some men are reporting an increase in size. If we now just took the data set who reported only having had prostate cancer surgery, which, as I said before, we have this clinical literature suggesting that using a pump could help bring back some size. Again, we're seeing this change to size the longer that men are using the pump for. Then after seeing this, I thought, actually, it would be so interesting to see whether men who are using it more frequently, so that would be 2 to 3 times a week or daily, versus men who said they used it maybe once a week or rarely, whether there would be a difference in these two particular data sets. And as you can see from this graph here, there does seem to be quite a big difference. Men who are using their pump frequently, 54% have noticed an increase in penile size versus 28% who are only using their pump infrequently. Of course, this is just correlational rather than causational. It's not necessarily just the pump that they're using. A lot of men are using probably all other kinds of methods for penile rehabilitation that could be affecting changes to any sexual function goal that they have. So again, this is quite rough and ready data, but at least gives some sort of indication that practice does seem to make progress when it comes to using a pump, and there is potentially a good reason to get into a habit and a routine of using your pump frequently if regaining penile size is one of your goals post-prostatectomy. So where to next? If you now want to purchase a pump for erectile dysfunction, we highly recommend the Vacurect with 10 rings. That was one of the most highly rated pumps that came out of the survey. Have a lot of education all about that pump on this channel, and you can purchase through our trusted suppliers that we're an affiliate to through links in the description box below. Please also like the video if you liked it. You can dislike it too if you didn't like it. Feel free to leave a comment below if you've used one of the pumps mentioned. Let me know how you found it, and feel free to subscribe to the channel too if you want to receive content just like this in the future.